Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca. In today's video, I am sharing 3 fun and basic ways to color in a stamped floral image. Whether you're an advanced colorist or a beginner, you can use these techniques to color in your favorite stamped floral images. I'm going to be using Trinity Stamp's Blooming Bunch stamp today, but you can use whichever floral image is your favorite. Trinity Stamps is one of my favorite small card making businesses, and so today's video is part of my Support Small Card Making Businesses series. So let's dive right into 3 different fun and basic ways to color in floral images. For this card, we're going to use a heat emboss resist technique and do some very light and simple ink blending on top. So I am starting with the main image from Blooming Bunch from Trinity Stamps, putting it on an A2 piece of white cardstock. It's Neenah Solar White 110 pound. I'm going to treat that with anti-static powder tool, brush away the excess with my Tonic Studio sweep, and then I'm going to ink up this entire stamp with Versamark ink. And this is a new ink pad, so it is really juicy. For those of you who've had issues with heat embossing, make sure that your Versamark is juicy. I did want to share that I am trying out a tool made by one of the crafty friends who subscribes to my channel. Her name is Debby. This tool is called the Debby, and I am using it to easily apply pressure to the front of my mini MISTI. So it's got that great doorknob handle that is very comfortable for my hand to use, and then the felt on the bottom, and it's very sturdy. I'm not affiliated with Debby. I don't have an affiliate account with her, but I am going to link to this tool down below because of those of you who have trouble getting even pressure on your MISTI, this tool is a winner. So I did pour some clear heat embossing powder on top, and I'm just going to heat set that. Obviously that's going to be hard to see in camera because it's all white, but just know that that heat embossing will resist our ink blending. I am also trying out today the domed foam blenders from Ranger Tim Holtz. I will be featuring these in a new and must-have crafty supplies video this weekend. So be sure to keep your eyes out for that. I am pretty sure I'm going to tell you right now that I love them. So we'll do a whole review of them this weekend so that you can really see them up close and personal. But as you can see, because of that nice thick foam that is domed, you can get a really light impression a lot easier than you can with the flat foam blenders. Now, I love foam blenders because I think you can get really quick and even coverage, but it is nice to be able to go into certain areas of your image like I'm doing here and just get a really nice soft blend pretty easily. So you know me, I am pretty heavy-handed with my ink blending, and that can be a problem if you're trying to go for a softer look. This is a way to use foam blenders to get that opaque look, but have a nice, soft, no hard lines edges to them. I am really happy with the quality, and as you can see, what I've done here is just popped in color of several Distress Oxide inks. These are kind of my favorite pastel brights, and once that's all done, I'm just going to wipe away the ink that is on top of the heat embossing. This way, the white from the paper that we trapped under the clear embossing powder will show through. This is a really easy way to lay down some color. I have the flowers from yellow to blue to pink, and then the leaves some green, and then some pink around the outside to even it all out. So just one simple way to create a really colorful but simply colored stamped floral image. For the sentiment, I'm going to use Gina K Designs Amalgam ink. This is my favorite ink because you can stamp it for Copic coloring, for watercoloring, and it's great for sentiments as well. I do like to double stamp sometimes when I don't get a super black crisp impression, but there you go. Look at how crisp and beautiful and true black that is. I am going to trim down that sentiment into a sentiment strip that I can then pop up on my colored floral background there, and just trying to find the right place because it really does look nice at the top, middle, or kind of bottom of this image. I love this image. I am going to use some liquid adhesive to adhere the panel down to a piece of glitter cardstock from Memory Box. I'm using liquid because it will stay on top of that glitter better than tape runner. So that's the first very simple, no coloring required technique for adding color to stamped floral images. For this card, I'm going to share some very basic Copic coloring techniques. I'm only going to use 2 colors for each part of the image. So I'm going to share some very basic ways to make those 2 colors add interest and dimension. As I mentioned, when I'm doing Copic coloring, I do stamp the image with Neenah K Designs amalgam ink. It is safe to use with alcohol inks. Usually what I like to do is stamp the image the night before and let it dry. If you're not going to do that, I would definitely recommend heat setting it. If you're having issues where the alcohol ink is smearing the black ink, that shouldn't happen with this ink. It just means you're not letting it dry long enough. So once I've stamped the image and it is nice and super crisp and black, I am going to heat set it. Seriously, heat set it all over the image for a long enough time that it is super, super dry. Like I mentioned, my preference is to stamp the night before, let it dry all overnight, and then color the next day. But sometimes we just can't get that done, right? So if you're not going to let it dry overnight, please heat set it as long as you can without scorching the paper. So the first 2 colors I'm going to use for the leaves are YG13 and YG17. And basically what I'm going to do is color in a section of the image that is going to be green with the lightest color first. So all of these leaves are kind of close together, means I can work on them pretty quickly together. And all I'm doing was coloring in the light color, and then I'm taking the dark color and going over the center vein of the leaf to add a little bit of depth. And this is a very easy way to do leaves, but I don't like those harsh lines. So to get rid of the harsh lines, I'm going to go over them with the lighter color. And that's the beauty of a really good alcohol marker, is that you can blend them out that way. For these tiny leaves, I wanted them to be darker. So I colored them all in with the lighter color, and then I'm really almost coloring in 3/4 of that tiny leaf with the darker color. So instead of just going in the veins, I'm coloring in from the base of the leaf 3/4 of the way up to the tips. I'm just leaving the tips the lightest color there. And then I'm going back with that light color and blending them out. This is a very simple way to add a little bit of depth and dimension to those leaves. Okay, for the sunflower, I'm going to do the same thing with 2 colors of yellow. I'm going to color all of the petals of the sunflower with the lightest yellow, and then go in with the darker yellow just near the center of the flower on the lines that the stamped image has. And then to lighten up those edges, I'm going to go over those lines completely with the lighter color. This is another way to do what we sort of just did with the leaves, to completely go over it and go a little further out, just adding a little bit of interest to those petals. And then for the center, I'm going to use the darker color that we used for the petals and color it completely in. Don't be afraid to really use the side of your brush too. It's okay if it bends. It's a brush tip. It's meant to be flexible. For the darker color on the center of that flower, I'm going to do tiny little dots, and you can see them here. I'm not doing them so far apart that there's tons of the lighter color in between, and I'm not doing them so close together that you can't see any of the lighter color, because then I'm going to go in with the lighter color and do dots on top of that. And that is going to blend the darker dots in with the base color that was the same lighter color. And look at how pretty that is. Super quick, super easy, not a hard technique at all. This time for the flowers, I'm going to do a different technique. Now, my marker here is dry, and you can tell because it is not going on smoothly. You can see lines, you can see sort of skipped parts. That means my marker needs to be refilled. So I'm going to go in with the darker color, and I'm going to completely go around the entire outline, not just the inner lines this time, but the whole outline. And then I'm going to blend that out by going over the whole thing again with the lighter color. And again, you can see I'm kind of struggling. I'm having to do extra strokes. That's because that lighter color was dry. So I picked a different color in between. I think it was B04 this time, to do the lighter parts of this flower and see how much smoother it is and see how much easier of a time I'm having filling that in. If you're struggling, sometimes it means that your marker just needs to be refilled. If you've had them for a long time, especially, and I've had my markers, some of them for years and years and years without having to refill them. So every time something like this comes up, I know that's what it is. So now I've done the outline technique once again with these flowers, and I'm using that new color to really blend them out. And you can see you get those shadows, but it's nice and blended without doing a lot of shading and blending on your own. You're just following the image of the stamp. For this leaf, I decided to do that outline technique. For the large pink flower, I have 2 pink colors. I'm going to use the lighter pink color to really fill in this entire image. And I'm just try and be smooth with your strokes if you're not going to do a lot of blending out. So now I'm going to take that darker color and I'm going to do the outline technique once again. This time I'm going over every single outline, just carefully following the image along. This is not hard to do. I am not a steady hand like this, but I can do this on these images because they're nice and round. They're a little bit larger, which makes it actually a little bit easier to follow them around. So you can see there that I have the outline and I have the lighter color and I don't want that harsh edge. So this time what I'm going to do is follow around and just brush back and forth until I push the outline back towards the stamped image. So that's what these lighter colors do to the darker colors. They don't erase it technically. What they do is push the color. So your lighter marker, you're just brush back and forth against the darker color to push that darker color towards the stamped line, and that will kind of blend those colors out so you won't see super harsh lines on the flowers, but you'll have that kind of interest of the depth and dimension of 2 colors together. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut this out. Another way to add some just interest to your floral images is to add white details. All I'm going to do here is add dots. You can add little lines along the lines of the flowers, but for this one, I just wanted to share how cute these little white dots with my favorite gel pen. If you haven't seen my favorite white gel pen video, I'm going to link to it up in the right-hand corner here. But all I'm doing is adding these little dots, and check it out. It just adds a little something extra special. So you don't have to know how to draw anything. You're just adding tiny little dots to all of the images just to add some fun and whimsy to them because these images are so cute as it is. I like to keep A2 pieces of colorful cardstock right on my desk. So I had cut out a tiny little square of the yellow. I'm just going to cover it up with a 4 by 5 1/4 piece of the green. And then I die cut the blue out of an oval die. I then heat embossed a happy birthday sentiment from the Trinity Stamps, a sentiment for almost everything, on some pink cardstock. So now we kind of have all the colors from the flowers and the leaves of the image in cardstock as well. And I did pop that up this time at the top and then added some white enamel dots from waffle flower as accents. For this card, we're going to use Distress Oxide refills to paint on a heat embossed image on dark cardstock. I've shown how to do this technique before on craft cardstock, but I did want to share that it works just as well on something as dark as the navy cardstock that I'm using here. I really wanted to make sure that I didn't get any embossing powder where I didn't want it, so I really treated this cardstock well. I have this in my original MISTI so that I could stamp both the bunch of blooms and all the butterflies that came with the stamped image as well. They are super fun to watercolor too. So this time I am putting white embossing powder everywhere, and I really want to make sure that every line is covered because those heat embossed lines are going to hold in the ink like a little reservoir, and it just makes it very easy. Someone commented that it's kind of like paint by number, and that's exactly what this is like. This is so simple. All you need are some Distress Oxide refills. If you're working on white cardstock, you can use any ink refills you have. For dark cardstock, you have to use Distress Oxide inks because they sit on top of the paper more than sink in. So I am going to use tiny little paintbrushes and a little bit of these Distress Oxide refills to paint my background here, to paint in the image. So these brushes are super tiny because I have lots of little detailed images that I need to fill in, and I just want to use a little bit of ink at a time. The great thing about this technique is that that's all you need, a tiny little droplet of ink, and it goes a long, long way. So I'm just going to pick up that ink and get started filling in these images. Like I mentioned, the heat embossing acts as a little wall. So you're basically just dropping the color in and moving it around. Now you'll see this cardstock is very absorbent. So things like yellow do sink in a little bit, and you will have to go over them a few times, but it's so simple to do that that's not really a big deal. It's not like you're having to be really careful about where you add color or where, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So it is still a very fun and easy to do technique. You don't need any artistic skills to do this. It's like the paint by number. You're just dropping the color into the different areas. For the green, I'm using cracked pistachio, and then I'm adding some coordinating colors to different areas. So you can see on the pink flower, I added some abandoned coral to the lines. You don't have to do that. You can just fill them in with color. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to get a little more tricky, you can add some secondary colors in to those areas just to add a little bit of interest. You can see I added a little bit to the base of the petals on the sunflower of the abandoned coral as well. But just check out how those colors really pop on that dark background. Such an easy technique and way to fill in a stamped floral image, but is very stunning. And the best part about it, I think, is when you die cut them all out. I am just using some purple tape here to die cut all of these little images out so that we can then play with them on the card. But you can see that because the outline of the image from the die has that same navy as the panel that I'm going to adhere them down to, there's no white outline. I actually like the white outlines of dies when you're layering them on top of white cardstock, but when you're layering them on dark cardstock, it does kind of take away from the smoothness of the image. Here, the outline outside the flowers is the navy that I'm adhering it down to, and it all just makes the floral images really pop off the card. So my panel is adhered down to a foil piece of paper from Memory Box as well. And then I'm just popping up those butterflies in different areas. For this one, I wanted the right hand wing to rest on the flower. So I'm going to double up the left hand wing with 2 layers of foam adhesive so that it pops off of the already popped up flowers. And you can see there, then the right hand wing just sits on top. And I'm using black foam squares because they are hidden behind your image that way. If you used white, when you look towards the side of the card, you would see those glaring white foam adhesive squares. But with the black, it really all blends in and it just makes the image stand out the most, which is what you want. I used Wish You Were Here sentiment down to a sentiment strip, white heat embossed from a sentiment for almost everything. It really does have almost everything on there. And then I'm just popping up the little butterfly on top. So you can make a really stunning card without any advanced colorist knowledge or skills. You can use basic Copic techniques like dots and lines. You can use basic ink blending, or you can use a very basic, almost paint by number effect of painting with Distress Oxide refills. I love floral images and I love finding different ways to color them in. Let me know in the comments below if you're somebody who loves playing with floral images too. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that bell so you can be notified every time I have a new video available. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca. Big furniture truck delivery. Not for us, for somebody else in the neighborhood. Going like 100 miles around. Using just 2 colors per. Used it for this card.